Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've got something that has been, let's say, for example, in Stephen's case, you've got some smoke dampers in. Um, any inspection needs to be, and also fire stopping, it needs to be referenced back to that particular asset, that fire collar, for example.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the whole battle I think that we're facing is how do you ensure that the information is recorded against that asset, whether it's a fire damper or a door, and that's why building information management systems are really, really important. That's the only way forward, because unless you've got a robust way of recording that information, historical data, and maybe on existing properties or assets, you need to draw a line under it where you can't get the full history, but you have had a full service test on that piece of equipment, because some of it's going to be a lot older, but it's still serviceable. So you need a competent survey where you've carried out that, and you record it against a unique reference number for that asset. But I think, that's the way that this industry needs to go. This is one of the things that Dame Judith Hackett picked up in her report when she talked about the materials used in the building industry, and in particular, if we're looking at residential buildings, that you could bring in any piece of equipment, could let it be, it could be a plasterboard, could be a piece of timber, could be any piece of structural material, and you wouldn't know where it came from. And that's where we need to go as an industry, as fire professionals, and as social landlords, to start putting these unique recording systems in place, whether it's QR codes, but it can't, that piece of paper that's not recorded against that actual asset doesn't mean anything as far as I'm concerned, because how do you know it was for the door that was, the door could be changed in between that. So I fully support what you're saying, George, and others. How do we do this in a coordinated and consistent way so that we haven't got multiple systems or multiple every like social landlord, from my point of view, shouldn't have a different system that cannot be easily read by others, should it?
Yeah,
that's my big battle.
I think the important thing is that what we need to do is focus on the data rather than the software applications, because there's always going to be new innovative software applications come out. What's critical is that as a landlord, you know what assets are in the building, and therefore whatever information is recorded against it needs to be using a common ID, so that ID is sustainable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But my biggest battle that I find is sometimes making that interoperability between different programs that we use. I could probably list 4 without thinking of different systems that are used within my organization for recording data. And if you want to change the data system, you have to go through an IT process, which takes months. So, and then it moves on. However, that is a frustration that probably we all feel, but it needs to be really. I agree with you in principle that the data set needs to be straightforward, but all these different applications need to be able to speak to each other, and that's the challenge that I think we face, or I face, going forward.
Can I bring Elliot in?
Sorry, I'm just on mute there. I completely 100% agree with what Paul's saying and with what George is saying. I think, and having obviously George and Richard, and we were on the call on Friday, and I have given it some thought over the last few days, is because we've created a system which we believed was an independent system, but that's for fire doors. So like you've said, if a building has 10 or 15 or 20 or 40 or 50 other golden threads stored somewhere, I think we have a duty of care, and it should be incumbent that whichever file or system you use should be able to export a CSV file to a central database which collates all the information under its separate headings. And that for me is the key to collating everything that we've got going on, because you'll have people using different software, you'll have people that, but the ultimate goal is that there is a CSV file exported which commonly links into a generic golden thread database, if you like, for each building. I suppose the question is, who is in charge of setting that up, and then how do you collate all the databases to speak to the one central one?
You see, that's everyone's got their own golden thread, haven't they? So
Yeah.
it's everybody's starting with a different start point, and in most cases actually finishing somewhere different as well. George, you're quite I know you've been using that analogy quite a lot, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And I think the encouraging thing is that people are talking about a golden thread, right?
Yeah.
The thing now, what we need to do is make sure that we're creating it in something that's manageable. Otherwise, it's going to fail, and then everybody's going to get disappointed.
But as you say, it's the focus for this meeting more is about the data itself.
Yeah.
Because until you've got that right, the golden thread's silver or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, Paul. You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah. Good morning, all. Sorry, I'm a bit late. Yeah, I needed a coffee to start get the brain cells firing. I think much of this could possibly be resolved if we were to create as a group a model based around, a building. From my perspective on housing, that would help. And all of those things that are common to a building and separate units, you could give a good example which people could follow. People quite often want to do that. In standards developments, people are always saying, well, if you've got a template, all right, let's take the template apart and recreate it within this British standard. So it doesn't belong to anybody, but we actually get the information we need under all those sections. I don't think it's insurmountable, but we do get engulfed in it. So our information at Orbit is combined with customer information, and that is one of my issues with safety, because the database is so huge and unwieldy that quite often I see the team chat. So there's 40 odd people in our team now, and the team chat is, I'm still waiting for ActiveH to load up. I'm still waiting for this. Doesn't exactly make for a slick system, does it, to deal with sort of safety issues, or show the regulator or anyone who wants to look, oh, this is how we manage. Can you imagine that? You're sitting there and waiting for 10 minutes for something to load up. Not impressive at all. I also thought that the building safety case would be a really simplistic way of directing people, and I've seen various different inputs of that looking overly sophisticated, in my opinion, because we're all collecting that data generally now anyway. We should be, and there's just that decision couple of sheets at the top which explains why you think your building is safe, and then every other bit of information that it should link to should prove that point. And again, that is the real high level. Would you agree? The safety case file is the real high level of why I think that block is safe. And then when you drill down, yes, you're going to get down to individual doors, door seals, jobs that have been allocated to a contractor to fix a bit of fire stopping.
I think in answer to your question, Paul, that what people are, I'm finding people are getting confused about is there's a safety case report, and then there's the building safety management system. So the safety case report is a snapshot in time where somebody has done a review and they've come up with a report which tomorrow could be out of date. Yeah. Whereas the duty of care on landlords is to have in place a building safety management system that is constantly there to be updated. If for example an AOV goes out, then you need to be able to report that, and it may be that you need to report that to the fire brigade.
Yeah.
So and therefore, what we need is something that enables we need something live, which is constantly being updated as simply as possible, so that you can then cut a view any one time. I think that's an important thing.
I'd argue you could do both. I mean, you're right. So the snapshot, is created. Let's say we create it on the 1st of January, but we do have those other systems which support that are continuously moving and changing. And the safety case file or the systems that could hold it, I've looked at, would potentially show you all of your red warning lights on the things that you said supported your statement. So just because you say we've got an up-to-date FRA, if when you open that particular building's safety case file report, it's got a red, then you know that actually there's something that's live that's happened there. So it's the static. Yeah, this is why we think that building's safe, but there's that acceptance that it's a continuously moving thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And what I'm trying to do at the moment, as you know, just to declare the interest, obviously, I'm running Active Plan as well, so we're trying to provide that ongoing system, and we want to also work with other people that are doing that same thing, because to be frank, the size of the task for all of the buildings in all of the country is huge. And what's important is that we all use standard protocols, so that there's a method that can be achieved on. But just to give you an example, we're working for a council at the moment where they've done quite a good job in that they've got fire risk assessments, external wall surveys, building safety case reports. They've got a whole range of technologies in. They've got ACO that have put sensors in, so they're running that. They've got a Hilti inspection system for doors and fire stopping, and they've also got a company called Thurlux that does the emergency lighting. So these are all live data sets, but they're all separate. So what we're doing is, and they've also, what was interesting, we went into the O&Ms and we found that they did big piece of remediation work a couple of years ago, and they used Boris, or the contractor that did all the fire stopping used Boris. Again, that was a separate report. And the current people that are doing fire stopping inspections, they've not even looked at that. So when they're going through doing their fire stopping reports, they're not actually relating it back to the same assets that were in the original one. So the complete break to the golden thread. And so what we're doing is we've created the spatial model. Active Plan allows you to create a spatial model so that you know where the spaces are in relation to the fire compartmentation and then the different things, and therefore that can become a master which has got a unique ID against which all of these different systems can then report. So then it doesn't really matter whether the fire door inspector's using Hilti or Plan Radar or whatever software they're most familiar with, as long as they're relating it back to that unique data key. But the other aspect of that is, we're talking with Elliot last week about looking at details. So to be able to relate the fire door information, Elliot produces, they manufacture fire doors, and therefore they've got those records. But also, if we've got the details and also what substrate it's going into, then you've got the big picture. If you then also incorporate that, the specification that the architect would have originally responded to, because we had a workshop yesterday. We had quite a well-attended workshop from the development group, had about 20 people on it, and we went through, and the architect was explaining, it's PRP were explaining that they take the fire strategy plan that is done by a fire engineer. they then use that to interpret that into the solutions that they're recommending, and that becomes then a specification. So what we should be doing is recording against that the door schedule that they produce. If we take doors, for example, we've got the specification and the fire strategy information. We can then hold that, and then when Elliot's got his information about the doors that have gone in, and also the door installers have taken their information, and then in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, they need to inspect them or maintain them or replace them or whatever. We've got that whole pass through.
Can I bring in Jack now? Hi, Jack.
Hiya, how you doing?
Hi, Jack.
Good to see you. So what do you think about all that, Jack?
Hey, well, so I did miss a fair bit. Sorry, I'm late.
I know, that's why I asked you.
Thanks, Richard. Very kind.
Yeah, we're kind of going through now that we're well into the process, and obviously for the fire safety, past the process, of exactly what is needed, how we're getting on, how it's working, what isn't working. Yeah, we had a good meeting yesterday, as George said, with the development group, and it was very, very nice because people were being very open. Yeah, I think the problem always is, which is one of the reasons I was doing the one-to-ones, if you remember. The problem is, if you've got a group, you tend to defend your position, and that doesn't really help, does it? But yesterday, people were very, very, very upfront, and they were like, "Well, you know what? We're using this, and it's not that great, or we're using this, and it's working very well because." So there was some credit. So that's what I'm hoping we could do today. And so what about you guys? How are you fixed?
Yeah, well, I think we're making very good progress. So we've got about 65 HRB estates, 75 blocks and 80 odd cores, and so we've laser scanned more than half. We've surveyed about 3/4, and so then we're putting that on our built environment system, and so we've just put a couple on to see how well that information goes in, check that it's all working. Yeah. And we've got that to a stage now, I think, where we're kind of just about to start uploading the second. We've made our changes, we've done our learning, and starting to upload hopefully the rest that we've got, and assuming that goes smoothly, which we expect, but of course might well not, then I think we'll be in a very good position. Now I think we imagine that we will have a kind of full element register for all our fire and structural safety relevant elements come 1st of October, the enforcement. So okay. While obviously we want to do more in terms of having our that linked to a model, so we can really understand our blocks and our buildings and how that all fits together. I don't think we'll quite be there for all of them. We want to have more in-depth data, around the register I'm talking about will just say we have, detection, one detection head there, but won't say the make and model. And I think we'll get that in with time when we go to repair or replace or things like that. So we won't have that, which is.
So you're looking at almost growing organically as you go along.
Yes, absolutely. So I think we're getting, hopefully by October, 1st of October, we will have that baseline information that
skeleton kind of.
Yeah, will allow us the foundations that allow us to have all this further information. Now, which is great, but we're in the process of starting to come up with the protocols that the business will have to adhere to keep that information up to date, which is obviously, which I think is the difficult part, really. It's people who have their day jobs, who have their set ways of working, these types of things, don't necessarily want to change, and we're asking them to do things differently. Now we're trying to make it easy and trying to sell it in terms of it will make their job easier in the future, but we're kind of trialing that in terms of for the fire door checks, because that's a new stream of work, so there's not an existing way of working. So we're trying to get that kind of activity stage where we do carry out repairs or inspections or whatever it might be, and capturing that information. We're kind of starting out on that journey. But
we've got a work stream. I don't know if you know, Jack. We've got a work stream going on at the moment with a guy called Alan Oliver, who wrote for the NHS a guide for fire door inspections. Type 1 being new installations, type 2 being those that are already in existence, and those first two have to have proper full-on inspections. Type 3, less so. They've had 1 or 2, so type 3 is kind of more than keeping it ticking over, but you get my drift. And he's been holding meetings with us with oh god, we had 50 people at one point, didn't we, George?
Yeah.
To do one for housing. So that's kind of in process. It's just you mentioned the regimen.
Yeah, so I guess we've got a whole load of different work streams, and I'm not that worried about how they look. It's how we capture the data. So
yeah.
I'm happy for someone else to say, so for the fire doors, I have come up and said, okay, well, these are the things that we're being asked for in terms of legislative requirements. So let's set them out in terms of gaps, damage, blah, 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 and then a free comments field. And this is how I would like it to come back in. Because I've got, but for other things, I'm happy for other people to say, this is what we do. And I say, okay, well, we can have this information stored in document format. We can have these fields going into a database. And that's the bit that I want to get to. And then I want to agree, well, what are the timelines for that? How will you ensure that we're doing that? How will we manage and monitor this? Those are the bits in terms of keeping the information live. I'm more concerned how we get those processes to keep that information up to date, rather than necessarily setting exactly what those activities might look like.
Yeah, that's what Paul was just saying actually a bit earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, Mustafa was
let me just ask you, are you doing just purely above 18? Or are you dropping down?
So fire door checks for 11 plus. But so that, but everything else 18 plus.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Mustafa was on yesterday, Jack, and he was saying that you've identified 65 elements or asset types. What would be useful, unless you object to that? We did a lot of work on the hacked with the hacked data set.
Yeah.
What would be, I think, quite useful is if you could let us know which ones you've identified as being the critical ones, and it might be that we can help to provide some more information against those. Making sure that they've got the right uniclass codes and things like that against them.
So we've done that mapping. I have to say I'm not a huge fan of uniclass or hack necessarily, and I find it a bit frustrating that they've got it and just said, well, there's uniclass, and you go into the activities and there's ballet dancing and all sorts. And I think it could have really been stripped to make it easier. But it's the idea that people just align to it. It's, well, some people might say, well, this is a door and that's at one level, and some people might say, well, this is a fire door and that's at a different level, or some people might, and it so
we're trying to simplify that. Say it's a door, and then the door has then got an attribute which is it's a fire door.
So
I think that's a better way of doing it.
That's the route we've gone down. So we have got a whole range. There's no real hierarchy to our elements, but each of them has their own specific set of attributes. So, you know, a boiler for us in terms of fire safety is it a gas boiler, yes or no? You know,
Yeah.
is there gas coming into that? Whereas a door, you know, has a list of 15 different attributes in terms of thickness, material, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. So that might, if you're willing, that might be a useful thing to catch up on. Yeah.
Happy to catch up on it, yeah.
Yeah. What we're also doing at the moment is we're creating a free data library for product manufacturers to store data sheets on the products that they are supplying. So I think that's another thing that can be a useful contributor to the process. Okay, so what obviously we're trying to do at the moment is really look at how we prepare for the Digital Construction Week, because we've got a slot at Digital Construction Week like we did last year, and what we're going to try and do. I think Elliot, you're actually coming to the event, aren't you, itself?
Yeah, so we're exhibiting at FireX,
Yeah.
basically pushing the new UKCA external marking that we've got on doors and fan lights and side lights. So yeah, we'll be there in force.
So is that something you'd be interested in coming to, Jack? Would you be able to come?
No, my wife is expecting our first child the day after that, so.
Oh, crikey. Okay.
Yeah, that could be a no then.
Yeah.
Hard no.
Where's your commitment, Jack?
On second thoughts.
Yeah. Paul, are you able to make it at all? It's at Excel.
You're on mute, Paul.
Trying to be good, trying to be disciplined. Yeah, it's easy for me to discuss that with Kelly and Neil and see who they want to go up there to represent. I mean, the whole idea of the sort of golden thread and information is Kelly's, but she obviously is not always able to get to these meetings. So my interest, when I look down the list of today, there's lots of other areas that I'm interested in. So I'm always interested to attend and say what I can, you know, to contribute. But leave me to come back to you on that.
Sure. And Stephen, you were able to come last year, weren't
I am.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm able to come this year. What time were you thinking? Because it's a Thursday, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Thursday. I think it's midday.
12, isn't it?
Okay, that's fine. It's all right. I've got our FPC audit that day as well, so I've got to try and juggle the auditor and then get into Excel, but that's fine if it's 12.
I guess, Paul, it's a bit too far for you.
So last year I went to Excel for the Tall Buildings Conference.
All right, okay.
So it's trying to justify going that far because it was a 2-night hotel stop. And there's a lot to try and take in. So I'm working on that. But you've also got the one at the Car Museum in Staffordshire. Is that right? Is there an event on the 26th of May?
I don't know about that one. That's not ours.
Oh, no. Well, I got sent out some. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, pretty sure it's through Jizz. Is it that sent an invite out? It's through.
Yes, wait a minute. That was the one that I think that's the one that Alex was talking about.
Yeah, so there's one on the 26th of May, and the conference you're talking about at Excel. When is that? That I'm trying.
18th.
18th of May. So what I'm trying to do is see if I can justify which one I can go to, because there's a cost involved in it as well. So it's not just the entry costs; it's also the travel costs and the hotel stay. And I lose a few days of work as well, so it does build up behind me. Then, as much as I like, so I usually get some good CPD, but I also get quite a lot of good networking opportunities. That for me is the main bonus from a lot of these events. You might not always get a lot of good CPD, but you get a lot to see what's going on in industry. So I'm working on it, George, to be honest with you. So I can't give you an answer yet, but so trying to balance the books on that one. So Jack, I was going.
No, carry on, Paul. Sorry.
I was just saying, Jack, was interested in what you said about your 5-door stuff. I'll send you a link on the chat if you're not already aware of it. And
that's what I've used to create the tick box.
Well,
that's basically,
and I'm on the group that's looking at the type 3 door check, which is one of the things that we're going to use. I think we should look at what the government guidance is to influence our way forward, because obviously we're going to be following a preferred path. So, and I think within my organisation, we're quite advanced on our fire door checks, and there's about the one thing that we are really advanced on, to be fair, because we're way behind on the building, the safety case and the information gathering from that point of view. But the door stuff, I think we're fairly good at. So I think we're all at different levels of maturity or progression through this process. So it's really interesting hearing what other people have got. And George, I think outside of this, we're trying to have a conversation around what your own company can provide us with regards to completing the safety case processes or the compliance with the Building Safety Act. So anyway, thanks.
The bit that you perhaps missed at the beginning, Jack, one of the things that has become pretty clear over this last few weeks that we've been working with a number of people on it. We've been doing quite a lot with Origin and Tower Hamlets and Barnet as well. Is that we've been looking at how we can take information from the various different. To some extent, the golden thread has been very good, and in fact, it's been very. We've got so many golden threads now, as Elliot was saying earlier. Everybody's got a golden thread. And therefore, as a landlord, you'll end up with dozens of them, and which is good that the information's being recorded, but something needs to bring them together. And so what we've been finding is that, for example, somebody's doing maybe a fire stopping audit using something like Bolster, and it's good application, but what is clear is that it's actually just recording the inspection. It's not actually relating it to an asset. Yeah, and we've found this over the years as well, with even on maintenance. People are using SFG 20 as the standard for doing the maintenance, which is great, but actually it doesn't actually relate back to a unique asset. And what we really need is for the let's say, for example, doors or fire stopping or fire dampers, for example. Stephen is a specialist in fire dampers and smoke dampers. You need that initial baseline to say that is the unique asset that's effectively owned by the landlord, and there's a unique ID against that, which ideally comes from when it was first specified and installed, so you've got all those record information. If you don't have that, then you need to create it when you're doing your surveys, but that becomes a unique ID that then becomes persistent through all of the different information sets that are then gathered against it, so that you've then got a proper history. Because we found that different fire door inspectors, for example, will use different software applications like Plan Radar, as I say, Bolster. Hilti have just bought FieldWire, so there's going to be a profusion of I think, Paul, you use ZetaSafe, don't you? I think Origin use She Assure or something. So and Boris as well. So they've got all these different systems. What we need to do is just agree with those different software providers that they will provide their information in a machine readable form, which I've spoken to several and they're willing to do that. But the problem is that everybody that uses them can create their own data. So they can create their own data templates. So they collect their own information and they use different IDs. So therefore, what we should be doing, I think, is when somebody's doing a fire door inspection or a smoke damper inspection, we ought to be trying to standardize the questions that are asked, so that we've got some way of comparing. Does that make sense?
So the answers are comparable.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the thinking, but I think, I mean, so we're absolutely doing everything's having a unique ID linked to our enhanced hierarchy. So because, you know, and not just a kind of you know, a kind of an element level, but because you might have a survey done to a flat, or it might be to a building, or it might be to an alarm system. So you need IDs for lots of different things.
Definitely.
But as far as standardization, I think to try and get everyone to agree on everything is not really possible. And I think we need to just sort out internally what we want and go about getting it in whatever way works best, because we've got enough of a challenge to try and get people to change the way we work. Now, I think we should just change people to get internally within our organizations, change to get them to the way we work in terms of what we are looking for, rather than just saying you must meet this industry standard that, you know, has been agreed by a patchwork of people. And actually, I don't think we really need this stuff. Or no, I think let's decide what we really want, because I think if you know, we between us here, we could all sit and decide, but we might get it wrong, you know. And I think it's got to be an iterative process. And if you go ahead
Definitely.
and do that yourself, which is what we're doing, and we've said, oh, we want this information, and you know, there's been things that we've done where we've got it wrong, but because we're not, you know, we've not set it out and now everyone needs to do it. You know, we're very agile and able to say, okay, no, scrap that. We don't want to do that. Or, oh, actually, God, we really need to add in that. We should have done that before. So that's I think we should be steering clear of aiming for standardization, and just getting people to really understand what they want. And yes, we want some broad standardization, but not getting down to details really.
Okay. Elliot.
So, Elliot,
Just probably to kind of move forward on that point that Jack's just made. So you've got the juxtaposition of a couple of different things. So for fire doors, it's quite straightforward. Well, now you should be third party accredited. So from a maintenance perspective, we have implemented what the third party accreditors require as their maintenance section. So that will be standard across every single company that use, let's say, BM4HOUSING as their third party accredited. However, the problem you have is that really doesn't mean anything, because that door should be maintained to the installation manual that the door has been tested to. So you get this hybrid, or this cross section of what what your base. Absolutely, you should be looking at your margins, your door closer, etc., etc. But ultimately, that door needs to be in the same state as it was when it was installed. Otherwise, it's not fit for purpose. So every door is installed slightly differently according to its test history and its field of application. So I think you're right, Jack, in the fact that as long as you're covering the basics for every element of that building, you're going to be a lot further along than we were previously, but you're never going to capture everything in one holistic set of maintenance requirements, because every single product is manufactured and tested slightly differently. So you can't standardize the maintenance side. You have to agree your basic parameters of X, Y, and Z, and then move that forward.
has anybody looked at the new product testing stuff that's coming out?
What you mean, the Morel report that came out the other week?
That's right. Yeah. Do you think that's going to make a difference? Is that going to standardise the?
I haven't. It's 100. I don't know if anyone's got it. It's 174 pages. I can stick it in the chat if you want.
You're all right. You're all right.
There's a good article actually that encapsulates it in building. That was what I used as a cheat sheet.
Right.
I just wondered if in terms of you were talking earlier about everything's tested slightly differently. I'm wondering if that report, if it's implemented, might actually change that.
Yeah, it comes down to the basic model. So if you're BM4HOUSING, you will say that your margins need to be part of the maintenance is your margins within that door set need to be within the required tested parameters of the field of application of that door. So then what does that mean? That means that the person maintaining it needs that field of application or certainly the installation manual to that door to say, right, well, the margin needs to be within 2.5 to 4 mil all the way around.
Yeah,
And anything more, but that will differ for only by 0.5 mil to 1 mil, but it will differ. We're actively trying to increase the margin for ease of maintenance and installation. But as soon as that changes, let's say we did get, not that you would necessarily would, but for devil's argument, we managed to get 6 mil. If somebody went to maintain our door and saw a 6 mil gap, they'd be like, shit, I can't do anything with this. It needs a new door, unless they've seen the test evidence. So
Yeah.
you just throw in, standardization is nigh on impossible because it all relates to that particular product.
And it's installation. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's how we get that information. So we attach our field of application and the installation manual into the installation record that sits on this independent platform, but you still need to access that prior to maintenance to know what you're looking for.
I think as well, it's we need to remember the context we're working in, and scrambling about post Grenfell, we would struggle to know whether we owned a building, whether we had responsibilities internally, and so to go from that to trying to say, well, let's maintain our fire doors, okay, there's a 5 mil gap. Well, actually, in terms of prioritizing and risk and looking at a building holistically, what we're looking for is compound errors. There's no door closer there. There's a lot of combustible material in the hallways. There's combustible external walls. That's the kind of risk we need to be dealing with first before we get down to that level. And I think we need to keep that in mind, which is why I kind of said I'm happy with just making sure we've got a full register of elements as that base. And look, that's a start. It doesn't. You speak to anyone outside the sector, it might not seem like a start, but I do genuinely think it is for us, and it's just worth remembering that.
Agreed. Okay, so in terms of how we part of the process is now for us to figure out how, for example, information could be gathered more easily. What do we need in terms of we've already done a lot of work over the last couple of years in terms of getting the various different experts in smoke dampers and systems and sprinkler systems and to give us their views as to what's needed. And what's certainly become clear is that you need to have the whole context of the asset, not just the individual asset itself. You need the context of the space it's going into, the other elements that are then forming part of that treatment, as the HSE call it. And obviously on existing buildings, that's quite a challenge to pull together. But it's a matter of probably deep diving O&Ms, if they're available, to be able to find what the original door schedules were and specifications and things. And if you haven't got that, you've got to do it from scratch through doing surveys. And it's probably a combination of those two things. But the key thing, I think, is that the safety case report isn't just that's not the goal, that's not the end, that's just a snapshot in time. And you need to have a safety management system in place, don't you, to do that. And what's really needed is for us to identify what information do we need to get from maybe refurbishments, where the information needs to come through from designers in a structured way, that we can then manage going forward.
Well, can I interrupt slightly, if I may at this time? Is that all right? You hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Carry on,
fine.
Paul.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that have been said, and I think it's really interesting. I want to come back to a point that you made, Jack, earlier, but also George. Really, I think from my point of view, there are two clear elements. The main priority for me is getting information for existing buildings, especially if we're talking about the Building Safety Act requirements, because we've got 6 high-rise in our portfolio. We've got maybe at most 10 buildings that go over 11 metres. I've gone around and we've measured buildings that we didn't realise were over 11 metres. So, and all of them are older buildings, or most of them are older buildings, and its information on them is you're lucky if you've got anything on archive. We've got blueprints of the buildings going back to 1960s, 70s. Fortunately for the high rise, we're retrofitting sprinklers in there, so we've got better sprinkler information, or better plans because of the sprinkler information. But that starting point, which we need to put into our asset data management system, needs to be, I think you said it, George, you need to have a survey point, because you haven't got original data, you haven't got a field of applications for a lot of the installations. Even doors that are less than 10 years old, you'll be working off global assessments, which may not be even valid now, but since Grenfell, when they removed a lot of them, especially on our doors, which were FD60s. So it's accepting what's the starting point for you as your building. And then when you've got the newer buildings, the biggest problem I've got with newer buildings when we have them built, I've developed quite a strong cooperation process with our development team, because we've got our own in-house development team. But trying to get, if you want to call it BIMs, building information, not just but building information management systems integrated into new builds is just a no-starter. That the companies that work for us do not understand BIMs. They do not asset tag stuff going in. There's nothing that correlates with information that we use. So, and then it goes back to the point that I think you made, Jack, earlier. I think it's more about the culture of an organisation and about getting people to come along on that journey. A national, I think there's a lot of us fire professionals, if you will, that understand that culture needs to change, but changing it at that micro level or within an organisation to gather that information together in one place, that's the biggest challenge that we all face. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jack, about how probably not easy to do it uniformed across the industry, but you may need to understand what you need to do as an individual organisation and get assistance from people like the people that are in the room now to push that forward. So I think that the challenge is there. We need to differentiate between new builds and existing buildings, accept a standard between the existing buildings, which may not, and I think it's covered in the guidance from Dame Judith Hackett and within the Building Safety Act. It will be less than a new build. We need to accept that. And then I'll go on to another point, is that I found this very confusing or not confusing, but it's difficult to understand which piece of legislation fits where and how do they overlap with each other. So in order for my organisation to understand it, I've created a report which I call Achieving Compliance with New Fire Safety Legislation, and I've just written it a couple of weeks ago, and I think it might even need updating now because of the new guidance that come out. So I did it specifically for PCH, my company, so that I could then encourage them to set up a task and finish group, which would focus solely on the fire safety elements for compliance with the new legislation. Because, like I said earlier, I think we're behind the lead on this. We're good on stuff, but others, it's like really concerning that we're not quite meeting the standards, and I'm not sure we'll meet the standards by October the 1st. So this is what I've put together, and I've tried to I've taken it. I've created a second one, which I'll be happy to share once I've taken all the other information out, because in it I put information about where PCH were compliant, where they're not compliant, and where they were sort of compliant. So it's a bit of sensitivity there that I wouldn't want to put out there in the public domain. But I'll be interested I'll be happy to share this and be interested in getting feedback about how you see that. If you get a chance to read it, how many pages is it? I can't remember. About 8 pages, and with reference documents in it. Would it be a template for people to use to see how close they are towards compliance, what they need to do to get towards compliance, because it talks about the golden thread, talks about what you need to do to create the safety case. I've taken a lot of information from the health and safety executive when I wrote this as well, with all the links there. So I'll finish this off today, and I'll be happy to share it with this group, or if I share it with you, George, and then you share out as you see fit. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, would you be interested in that? And then I think this might help us solve some of the other questions about how do we gather information? What do we need to have? That's the thing that puzzles me. You know, Jack, I think sometimes, you know, I think you were hinting at that as well. There's so much that we think we need to do. Do we all agree that we need to do that? So, yeah. You know, I think I've...
Well, that's obviously the purpose of these meetings, yeah. To try and get through that wood. Can I bring Bex in now? She's Bex, are you there? No, she was kidding us.
Get a coffee.
Sorry, my computer decided at that moment to just break on me. I haven't got a camera, but I am here, yes.
Oh, no worries. We've just been going through looking at the information needed. Well, that was the plan, but we kind of got distracted a bit. But we do want to know where everyone is excuse me, where everyone is on their paths. I mean, you and I have met a couple of times, I think. So how are you doing now, Bex? Do you want to just say where you are? How you are?
Yeah, so we have done a matrix of information that we've got, information that we think we need. We've gone through sort of the Building Safety Act line by line, working out what exactly it means and what exactly we have to support for the Building Safety Case report. We've gone through some of our old archive stuff, the paper files. We've had someone come in to scan those all in to make those digital, so we've got those. It's what I guess the struggle is now is keeping that momentum, keeping people, you know, the project going, because what we want, like I said before, is a sort of portal, so a live document on a site that links to the information that we've got rather than contains the information we've got. And we've got all of those things, just linking those up, and that's the next step now. We've worked out what we have, where we have it, whether we need it, or whether it's just nice to have. All the nice to haves at the moment are going to go, okay, we'll keep that for after October, but all of the needs are where we are right now. We just got to work out that linking that information bit.
Okay, that's so you right. So you're ready, as far as you're concerned. You're ready.
Define ready.
Right, define ready. Well, you're going to be okay. Right. Let me throw this out, which somebody said the other day, which I thought was quite an interesting one. Define ready. Well, how would you define ready? Would you say the most important thing is to be compliant? Or would you say the most important thing was to be safe?
And both of those, I'd say, okay, we're ready, but it's the end product that the regulator wants, which we're not ready. So we know we're compliant, you know, we know our buildings are safe because we have all of those things already in place. But that one-stop shop case report, we don't have that yet. Right. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. George was explaining that there are actually two documents or two outputs.
Well, it's
sorry. You explained it better than I did.
Yeah. So what I guess I'm saying, Bex, is that a lot of people are trying to be in place to, you know, when they register their building. Yes. Obviously, you've got to be able to have a safety case report when it's required, but the point is that isn't the end. That's actually just the beginning. Yeah. And it's only a snapshot in time, and therefore the safety case report is really a view at that point in time of the safety safety management system that you've got in place. And yeah, so I think you're doing exactly the right thing in looking to pull all that together. The other thing that you missed at the beginning, which I know you're very into information management, so I think you've probably covered this already. But one of the things that we're finding is that the information, the inspections that people are doing on fire doors, fire stopping, and things like that are done often. The records about those, the golden thread of whatever that person is doing, isn't actually being related back to a unique asset. So what we've been basically saying is that Jack, for example, what they're doing within Clarion is every single asset that they want to track, that they've got a unique ID against, and therefore any inspections and things is always going to be referenced back to that unique ID. And I think that's what we need to make sure is happening, because we're working for a council at the moment, and they've used Bolster a couple of years ago when the did some big renovations. So the Bolster report, we've been able to take the data out of the Bolster report and identify where the pins are in the building, sort of thing, so that you've got the relationship between the pin and the space. But they've now got a new firm that's doing fire stopping inspections, and they're doing it brand new. So they're not relating it back to the original Bolster information, because that wasn't easy for them to do. It was a separate file, separate document, separate report. So what the council has got at the moment, they've got two sets of information that aren't related to each other, and that obviously, is not really what's needed. And as we've drilled through that, you also need to record what the specification was of that item, and how that ties back to the fire strategy for the building. So it's really a matter of just gluing the stuff together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Several people have we really wanted to get down to exactly what information has at this stage of the game. Everybody's got the experience, they're on the track. What information do we actually need? Jack's saying pretty high level information. I think that's fair. George, I think would probably say, well, no. We need to dig. We need to be more granular. Would that be fair?
No. What I'm saying, I think what Jack's doing is right. All I'm saying is that if we can collect the information in a structured form, then the rest of the information can be gathered incrementally.
Right. So it's not about what information it is. Your stipulation, if you like, would be about it's the form it's actually in.
Yeah. So doing so, having a process in place so that, for example, I mean, crikey, just knowing on an existing building where the dampers are is a good first step. Then, if you can identify what type of damper they are, then that's the next level of granularity. And if you've got those in proper libraries, then you can add the additional information. And then, you might then look through the O&Ms and identify, it was an actionaire, whatever that was used at that time. So therefore, can we at least put against that item a data sheet from actionaire about that model number?
So you and Jack are not taking antithetical positions then?
No.
It's complementary. Oh, that's no fun, is it?
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that it's also a matter of not doing the absolute minimum, though. So the reason I'm saying that is that we don't know what is going to be required in 6 months' time, a year's time, because the regulator doesn't know. Yeah. And to be frank, events will drive that, won't they?
Yeah.
You know, when something happens where, you know, we're already seeing it now with mold, aren't we? You know, all of a sudden, you know, building safety, everything was about fire and structural safety, and now mold is on the agenda. You know, so therefore, you know, ventilation becomes an issue, and you know, people are now looking to put sensors in to be able to pick up on that. That's something that a year ago, you know, probably people wouldn't have been as bothered about.
Who knows where sustainability's going?
Well, that's the other, you know, huge
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? You know, so but the important thing is that, you know, sustainability, for example, as long as we can record what the spaces are and what the assets are, if we've got that information from a fire safety point of view, because that's the important thing that we've got, then you can start to overlay additional information against that, because you've got a good base data set to work to.
Right.
And I think that's where we're going. You know, so, you know, for example, one of the things that we're doing at the moment is as Active Plan, we've got work going on with EPDs. So we're standardizing environmental product declaration information so that can then be brought through. And I think if we can do that, then it means that the information can be done incrementally. It's not big bang.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Alex, welcome.
Yeah, Alex.
Thank you. Apologies.
I have to step out, I'm afraid, because I've got another meeting I've got to go to. So can I leave you to
Alex
two
is
things?
Here, so everything's fine.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.
No pressure. Thanks, George. This is the awkward silence bit. I don't want you to catch me up on the last hour.
No.
Tell me, what have we agreed? Can somebody briefly summarize what we've agreed?
Jack can.
Sure. Yeah. We've agreed nothing. We've had some good discussion though.
Okay.
No, we've agreed. Well, Jack, I think most people agree with what Jack was saying. I think most people agree with what George was saying. It was more a question of emphasis rather than anything else, was it? Yeah.
Have we got some agreement? Sorry, do we know which specific date? Because DEC runs over 2 dates. Have we got a date?
Yes, the Thursday.
It's the Thursday. Okay.
It's the Thursday.
18th.
Are you around for that?
Well, that might be difficult, but I need to potentially reshuffle. But I'll see. I was really hoping that it would be on the day before. But anyway, Thursday 18th. It's all happening on Thursday the 18th. What's so good about that day? Okay, midday. Okay, that's fine. I'll see if I can make it there. I'll let you know, Richard.
Excellent.
And how many tickets have we got? And do we know who's going?
No.
Okay.
No, we don't actually know. There's a lot of people that have said they're coming, but will they? And there are a lot of people who are like you, kind of tentative. So it's one of those, like our meetings, any of our meetings, you've got the definites, and you won't get all of those. But the tentative, funnily enough, we get about 80% of the people who are tentative actually turn up on the day to our meetings, which is was quite a surprise when I found that. You expect it to be the other way around, don't you?
Okay. Okay, and have we got specific? I know you guys have already been talking. I'm now asking all the awkward catch-up questions, but have we got ideas of specific topics, or is that what we now need to agree in the next 30 minutes, 20 minutes?
It's sort of the age-old question that is going on and refining all the time, which is the information, what's actually needed, and how to present it, how to manage it. So we've moved on. I mean, today was I suppose intended to be more about the information side of things, but it's been impossible. It's impossible once you got to a certain level. It's impossible to stop there. You've got to get onto it. That's fine, but it's got to be managed in a certain way.
Yeah.
we've spoken about different software systems for doing that. Issues with the fact that there are so many different software systems, the fact that everybody's got a different golden thread. And they're not really golden threads, are they? They're strands that go into the golden thread. I think it's a bit of a misnomer to call them golden threads. But everybody's got a different strand of the golden thread that's got to be brought together.
Okay, and in terms of organising, so just thinking about what happened last time, there were, I don't know,
it's chaos.
Well,
for the first 20 minutes, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly lessons learned. I think we need time to sit down and understand what the task is and encourage those conversations, because I think we had a lot of interruptions last time. So I think if we
I think there were issues. I think there were issues as well with the last lot, and then the equipment wasn't working, and you had a right to. Luckily, thankfully, I wasn't there.
Yeah. So, but there were sort of 6 or 8 tables, I think. And are we taking the same approach as last time? So
I'd say it's semi. I think it'll be more of maybe 1 or 2 larger groups rather than split down into the.
Okay.
It's an hour, which so you can work on 45 minutes. By the time you've got change over each end, so it's not really very long. It's like last time to some extent. Everything was the end point was semi predetermined before we actually had the meeting. So there's going to be an element of that. Like last time, I would imagine you get a lot of walk-ins, which is good.
Okay, but at this point, do we need to agree what the questions are that we're going to be doing and organise ourselves, or have we got another series of discussions to happen between now and then?
This is it. It's all well, basically feeding into George to organise for the day. Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Alex and Richard, sorry to interrupt. I think that's a key question or a key point, like a terms of reference or what is the purpose of the group, what we're trying to achieve, because like as we've already said, we've talked around a lot of topics this morning, and I'm not sure that we've actually come up with an agreed way forward that is going to drive movement, let's put it that way, so I would be interested in knowing what is it that we want to try to get out of this meeting and the meeting, the meeting that's going ahead up in, this is on the, did you say the 18th of May?
Of April.
Yeah. April. May.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah. Because there's so many topics to talk about. It's like you could become overwhelmed with it. So I think we need to start somewhere, grab one of these threads and follow it through to the end.
Yeah, well, the thread we're trying to grab is information. Yeah. What actually do you need? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it, and how are you going to store it? How are you going to retrieve it? How are you going to update it?
Yeah. So if we looked at what's required to create a safety case taken from the guidance put out by the government, I think that's where your starting point is. That's the information that you want. And there's a whole list of bullet points which I could read. I'm looking at the note that I put together, and it's talking about the profile of the residents. So how do you get that information together? What systems we got in place for that? Information about the building, and that's what we talked about. That's quite hard on an older building. Even newer buildings, we got that. Building height numbers, some of that's quite simple. Then about talking about the common parts of a building, and again that comes back to building plans and surveys. So what are we using in order to gather that information? What is suitable for each organisation to have? Because it also feeds back into the information that the fire and rescue services require from landlords. And I had a conversation. I meet with the fire and rescue service every 3 months. This is a meeting that started way back in 2017, formally following the Grenfell Tower, but it's morphed into other things. And I spoke to the fire and rescue service around the provision of plans, that within it, they, from the 23rd of January, we're supposed to have uploaded plans to portals. And I said, I had to give them a plan that they could use without using the plans that we've already got, which are from the secure information boxes. And those are plans that they developed, as well. And they said, this is Devon and Somerset, mind you, they're looking at accepting the plans that they've already got, their risk information plans, and accepting them. They're going to send them to us for us to send back to them, basically, to say, can you confirm this is the existing layout of your building hasn't changed since the plans were done, and then we'll accept them as the plans. So it's about, this is where we get really complicated, because some fire and rescue services may not have that system in place. They may not be so agreeable with a way forward, and they may be Devon and Somerset deal with multiple landlords. It's not just us. So you've got to come up with a common approach. And then I think this is where we need to focus on our information, this thing. What do we require? What's required to create a viable safety case? And I know that's what George was talking about earlier, but there are clear bullet points within the guidance provided by the HSC, the Building Safety Regulator, and in the Building Safety Act, which do that. And then I'm looking at what about is required from the Fire Safety England regulations, which introduced another 8, or there's about 8 things that link into the Building Safety Act, information to residents. For me, if I had a package that I wanted for one building or an organisation, I'd want to know that my comm strategy for the residents was something that was clear, was consistent, and was able to be repeated without changing too much of the detail. So, because the government requires us to send out that information to the residents every 12 months on fire doors and on their evacuation strategy. So that's one of the things that that I think we need to look at as I need to look at internally within my own organisation. But is it something that we can draw together as a group of people, of interested parties, fire professionals, housing providers, etc., and say, right, there's so much duplication of effort going on here. Let's save it. Let's try and share it. And that's what I think is the purpose of this group. So, again, I know I've had the floor for a couple of minutes, but it's trying to give you an overview of where the challenges that I think I'm facing, which I don't think are unique. But at the moment, I need a clear steer. Give me a job to do, and I'll try and I'll do it. But at the moment, there's too many. That's my that's my point. Leave it to the rest of the floor now.
So you're going to share that with us, your document. Sorry, you're on mute.
Fell for the fatal trap. Yeah, I'll just make sure that it's in the best format that I can do it. There obviously might be some areas which people will need to, which will have a different point of view on. But it's about how I see things from my point of view, and it's based on a paper that I put forward to my board.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, we're having these meetings, and obviously they all take a different turn. You know what it's like, but with the different groups, with the different specialisms. So it's a question of pulling the information, learnings, slants, perspectives, priorities from each of them together into something that we can discuss on the day in 45 minutes. So it's going to be, by definition, pretty high level. We can't go into that much detail in that sort of time. As you say, given the number of subjects or strands of the golden thread that there are to go through. It's just going to be a question of, I guess, George taking a view, and I suppose I'll be inputting as to what are the most important or the standout points that are most common between each of the groups.
Yeah. And I'll go back to, I was in a board meeting the other day, and the opening statement from the board chair was, give us an overview of how your fire safety strategy is working within the organisation, but give us let us know if there's anything that's keeping you awake at night. And I thought that was a great opportunity for me to actually really express to the board my concerns about where we are. We do a lot of things really well, I think. PCH, the company I work for, put a lot of time and effort into safety overall, but fire safety never really stint on budget, and work really hard for it. But what keeps me awake at night is ensuring compliance and the safety. I think the question that George asked, what's more important, compliance or safety? I think they do come hand in hand, which is what Bex was saying as well. But safety, yeah, if you're not safe and people die, the regulator will be at you, as well as having to deal with the conscience, the moral issues around that. But compliance, if you're compliant, you should be safe. That's what I would have thought would be the outcome of that. And that's what keeps me awake at night when I'm trying to think, oh, I haven't quite done that right yet. The regulator could come at me and take action, issue a notice against us as a provider for something that could have been dealt with earlier, and that's what it's trying to get this right before I think October comes in. There's a lot of work to be done, and that's what keeps me awake at night. And without a concerted effort by my organisations and also people assisting us, I think sharing. That's why one of this type of group is really helpful, because it says, "Oh, we've already done a lot of work in that. Let's see what we can have, what we can give you for you to use." And that's what I want. This is what I think networking and these type of groups are really helpful, because it helps us share good practices and cuts out the time wasted on things that don't work. So yeah,
absolutely. You learn from somebody else's experience. It saves you having to do it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, listen. From my point of view, I think we've got some very good input to go into the pot, if you like, for George to work out exactly what we're going to do on the day. Has anybody got anything else they want to add?
I'll get in touch with George and just offer a helping hand if I can, because I've been here for the last
Sorry,
hour,
Paul.
Oh yeah, what I was going to add was what Paul, Bray's offering would be really useful. If you've got something down in black and white, we'll all have some view, and we'll hopefully improve the document for you, Paul, or just confirm it's brilliant. From my perspective, I always go for safety rather than compliance, because I've got some elements of my buildings that aren't compliant but are safe. I do expect that we are moving towards complying with standards across the board, but I couldn't say that all of our systems and all our elements of our systems comply with the relevant standard. No, absolutely not. We are far from that.
That's a really good point, but and I'm exactly the same boat. But when somebody comes at you from a regulator point of view, it's quite difficult to say, yeah, this is compliant, and then that's when it hits you in the financial pocket, because your credit rating goes down when you have to report to your own housing regulator. So I keep getting informed. So I get that. I'm happy to send it out rather than just send it to George. Is there a group email that, or is there? Would you want to rely on?
Well, you can put it on the chat now if it's ready. If not, send it through to Jess.
All right, I'll send it to because I've got to proofread it to make sure that there's nothing in there that's contradictory, it's more or less ready to go, but I don't want to do it just yet. Okay.
Sure, no worries. That'll be excellent. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Anybody, anything? Okay, well, let's do what I like to do, which is finish early. Brilliant. Listen, thanks very much indeed for that. It's been going to be really helpful for the DCW meeting, the session. And I don't know when your next operations group is, Alex, do you?
That's a very loaded question.
I know. I was passing the buck.
You put me right on the head. I don't know that I do know when it is.
Just do you know when it is? No.
I don't know if it's in the diary.
There's one this afternoon. Oh, is it manufacturing, isn't it? Sorry, it's manufacturing this afternoon.
Yeah, this is operations, Elliot. You've been paying attention, haven't you?
Same difference. Put a door in a hole.
Well, okay. Well, regardless when the next one is, we're hoping we'll see you then. Alex, do you want to close out?
I don't want to close out. Yes. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry that I was only here for like 19 minutes of it, so sorry about that.
But it was worth it.
I'll watch the recording at double speed so I get through it quickly. And yes, I'm looking forward to trying. I hope that we can see some of you, meet some of you in person at the DEC at Excel in a month's time or so. So thank you for your attention and input. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex.
Cheers, guys.
All right.
Cheers,
Cheers,
thank you.
folks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Such a fraud.